First contact. The vast emptiness of space shimmered with a faint glow of distant stars as Zixera's small scout ship hurtled through the darkness. The blue-skinned, four-armed alien cursed under her breath, her luminescent eyes darting across the flashing morning lights on her control panel. She had been too curious, ventured too far from her assigned patrol route, and now she was paying the price. "Come on, you piece of junk," Zixera muttered, her delicate fingers dancing across the ship's controls. The engines sputtered and whined, struggling against the gravitational pull of the unremarkable yellow star and its third planet. She had been drawn to this system by faint, intriguing radio signals, but now those signals might spell her doom. As the ship entered the planet's atmosphere, flames licked at its hull. Zixera gritted her teeth, using all four of her arms to wrestle with the controls. The ground rushed up to meet her, a patchwork of green and brown that grew more detailed with each passing second. With a bone-jarring crash, the ship plowed into a field, carving a deep furrow in the earth before coming to rest at the edge of a forest. Smoke billowed from the ruined engines as Zixera, dazed and battered, stumbled from the wreckage. The alien scout took in her surroundings with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The air was thick and humid, filled with the chirping of unfamiliar creatures and the rustle of vegetation. Zixera's sensitive nose twitched at the myriad of new scents. As the adrenaline of the crash faded, pain blossomed in her side. Zixera looked down to see a nasty gash across her midsection, oozing purple blood. She pressed one of her hands against the wound, wincing at the touch. "Hello? Is anyone hurt?" A voice called out in a language Zixera didn't understand. She froze, her heart racing. The planet was inhabited, and now she had violated about a dozen non-interference protocols. A figure emerged from the tree line, a bipedal creature with pinkish-brown skin and a tangle of dark fur on its head. It wore colorful fabrics and moved with a cautious grace. Zixera's translator struggled to process the new language, but she could see the concern etched on the creature's face. "Oh my God," the being said, eyes widening at the sight of Zixera. Are you okay?" Zixera's translator finally kicked in, converting the strange sounds into something she could understand. She opened her mouth to respond, but a wave of dizziness washed over her. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was the alien creature rushing towards her, calling out to others of its kind. When Zixera awoke, she found herself in a strange enclosed space, lying on a soft surface. The room was filled with unfamiliar objects, and a window showed a sky turning orange with the setting of the system's star. She tried to sit up but gasped as pain shot through her side. "Easy there," a gentle voice said. Zixera turned to see the same creature from before. A human, her now functioning translator supplied, sitting nearby. It was a female with long dark hair and kind eyes. "You took quite a hit in that crash. I'm Emily, by the way." Zixera blinked, her mind racing. This wasn't how first contact scenarios were supposed to go. There should be quarantines, diplomatic exchanges, careful cultural introductions. Instead, she was lying injured in what appeared to be a human dwelling. I am Zixera," she managed to say, her voice sounding strange through the translator. "Where am I? What happened?" Emily smiled, and Zixera was struck by how similar the expression was to her own species. "You're in our guest room. My husband Tom and I found you by your ship." She said the last word with a mix of excitement and disbelief. "You were hurt pretty bad, but luckily Tom's a doctor. He patched you up as best he could." As if summoned by his name, another human entered the room. This one was taller, with shorter hair and a scruffy growth of fur on its face. "Ah, our guest is awake," he said, his voice deeper than Emily's. "How are you feeling?" Zixera tried to process the situation. These humans had found her, an alien creature, crashed in their field. And their first instinct had been to help her, to bring her into their home and treat her wounds. It defied everything she had been taught about primitive species. I am confused, Zixera admitted. Why did you help me? Aren't you afraid? Tom and Emily exchanged glances. Well, sure, we were scared at first, Tom said. But you were hurt. We couldn't just leave you there. Besides, Emily added with a grin, it's not every day you get to meet an honest-to-goodness alien. The kids are going to flip when they meet you. Zixera's eyes widened. Kids. There are more of you. As if on cue, the sound of running feet echoed through the house, followed by excited voices. Mom, Dad, is the alien awake yet? Emily laughed. Speaking of which, brace yourself, Zixera. You're about to get a crash course in human hospitality. The door burst open, and two smaller humans tumbled in, their eyes wide with wonder as they beheld Zixera. The alien scout felt a moment of panic. Surely now, faced with her otherworldly appearance, the humans would recoil in fear or disgust. Instead, the smaller human, a girl with braided hair, broke into a huge grin. Wow, you're so cool. I'm Lily, and this is my brother Max. Do you want to play video games with us? Zixera blinked, overwhelmed by the child's enthusiasm. She looked to Tom and Emily, expecting them to scold their offspring for such forwardness. But the adult humans were smiling indulgently, seemingly unfazed by their children's instant acceptance of an alien in their home. Now, kids, Tom said gently, Zixera needs to rest. But I'm sure she'd love to play with you once she's feeling better. Max, the boy, nodded seriously. We'll make you chicken soup. That's what Mom always makes when we're sick. As the children chattered excitedly, peppering Zixera with questions about space and her home world, the alien felt something shift inside her. The fear and confusion began to melt away, replaced by a warm, unfamiliar feeling. These humans, these strange, pink creatures on a backwater planet, had taken her in without hesitation. They had tended her wounds, offered her shelter, and were now treating her not as some terrifying other, but as a guest, perhaps even a friend. For the first time since crash landing on this alien world, Zixera felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps, she thought as Lily carefully placed a stuffed animal next to her on the bed to keep her company, this accidental first contact would turn out to be the best mistake she had ever made. As night fell and the human family bustled about, making plans to accommodate their unexpected guest, Zixera drifted off to sleep. Her last thought before succumbing to exhaustion was a surprising one. Surrounded by these kind, curious beings, she felt unexpectedly and wonderfully at home. Cultural shock. The following days were a whirlwind of new experiences for Zixera. As her wounds healed under Tom's careful attention, she found herself immersed in a crash course on human culture, courtesy of the Johnson family. Lily and Max, the children, were her most enthusiastic teachers. They showed her their toys, introduced her to Earth foods, and tried to explain the intricacies of human social interactions, often with hilarious results. No, Zixera, Lily giggled one afternoon, you can't just tell people they smell interesting. That's considered rude. Zixera's bioluminescent freckles flashed in embarrassment. But on my world, commenting on someone's scent is a compliment. It means they have a unique chemical signature. Max nodded sagely. Earth is weird like that. We say people smell nice, but only if we know them really well, or if they're wearing perfume. These little cultural lessons were a constant source of fascination and confusion for Zixera. She marveled at the humans' ability to navigate their complex social norms, which often seemed contradictory or arbitrary. One evening, as the family sat down for dinner, Zixera watched in amazement as they performed what seemed to be a ritual before eating. They clasped hands, bowed their heads, and Tom spoke words of gratitude to an unseen entity. What was that? Zixera asked after they had begun eating. Emily smiled. That was grace. It's a prayer to thank God for our food and blessings. Zixera's translator struggled with the concept. God. Is that your planetary leader? The ensuing explanation of human religions left Zixera more confused than ever. The idea that humans could have so many different beliefs about the nature of existence, yet still coexist, mostly peacefully, was mind-boggling. As the days passed, Zixera found herself growing increasingly comfortable with the Johnson family. She helped Emily in the garden, learning about earth plants and the strange human habit of growing food for pleasure rather than pure necessity. She watched in awe as Tom fixed things around the house, marveling at the ingenuity humans displayed in solving problems with limited technology. But it was the children who truly captured Zixera's heart. Their boundless curiosity and acceptance of her alien nature was a constant source of joy and wonder. They taught her to play their games, from simple board games to complex video simulations that left Zixera dizzy but exhilarated. One afternoon, as Zixera sat on the porch with Lily braiding her hair, a bonding ritual that the alien found oddly soothing, she noticed Max tinkering with a small device. "What are you doing, Max?" she asked, careful to keep her head still under Lily's ministrations. Max looked up, his face smudged with dirt. "I'm trying to fix my old radio. I thought maybe we could use it to contact your people." Zixera felt a pang of guilt. In the comfort of life with the Johnsons, she had almost forgotten about her own world, her duties, and the undoubtedly frantic search her people must be conducting for her. "That's very thoughtful, Max," she said softly. "But I'm afraid Earth technology isn't quite advanced enough to reach my home. My ship's communication system was damaged in the crash." Max's face fell for a moment, but then brightened. "Well, maybe we can fix your ship. Dad's really good at fixing things, and I bet if we all work together, we can figure it out." Zixera was touched by the boy's determination and optimism. It was a trait she had noticed in all the humans she had met so far, this unshakable belief that any problem could be solved with enough effort and teamwork. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the farmland surrounding the Johnsons' home, Emily called the children in for dinner. Zixera remained on the porch, lost in thought. She knew she should be trying harder to repair her ship, to contact her people. It was her duty as a scout, after all. But a part of her, a growing part, was reluctant to leave this strange, wonderful family that had taken her in without question. Her musings were interrupted by Tom, who joined her on the porch with 2 steaming mugs. He handed one to Zixera, who sniffed it curiously. The rich, bitter aroma was familiar by now. Coffee, the seemingly magical elixir that humans use to boost their energy. "Penny for your thoughts?" Tom asked, sipping from his own mug. Zixera's translator glitched for a moment before supplying the idiomatic meaning. She was getting used to these strange human phrases. "I was just thinking about how different everything is here," she said. "On my world, we value order, efficiency, and adherence to protocol above all else. But here, everything seems to run on emotion, on connections between people." Tom nodded, his eyes on the darkening sky. "That's humanity for you. We're messy, complicated, and often irrational. But we're also capable of great kindness, creativity, and love." Zixera considered this. "Love," she said, testing the word. "My people have a similar concept. But it's cooler, more reserved. Humans seem to love so freely, so intensely. It's both our greatest strength and our greatest weakness," Tom admitted. "But personally, I wouldn't have it any other way." As they sat in companionable silence, watching the first stars appear in the twilight sky, Zixera felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. She was beginning to understand what Tom meant about love, and it both thrilled and terrified her. Their peaceful moment was shattered by the sudden sound of approaching vehicles. Bright lights cut through the darkness, illuminating the driveway as several black SUVs pulled up to the house. Tom stood up, his body tense. "Zixera," he said quietly, "I think you'd better go inside." But before Zixera could move, men in dark suits were pouring out of the vehicles, surrounding the house. One of them, a tall man with a stern face, approached the porch. "Mr. Johnson," he said, his voice clipped and official, "I'm Agent Carter with the NSA. We need to talk about your houseguest." Zixara felt a cold fear grip her hearts. She had known this idyllic time couldn't last forever, but she hadn't expected it to end so abruptly. As Emily and the children gathered at the door, their faces a mix of fear and defiance, Zixara realized that her presence had put this family, her family, in danger. The warm feelings of belonging were quickly replaced by a grim determination. Whatever happened next, she would do everything in her power to protect the humans who had shown her such kindness. As Agent Carter began to speak, outlining the government's awareness of the alien crash and their intentions, Zixara steeled herself for what was to come. The cultural shock of adjusting to life on Earth was nothing compared to the challenge that now lay before her. But as she felt Lily's small hand slip into hers, Zixara knew one thing for certain. She was no longer alone in facing whatever the future might hold. The hunt begins. The tension in the Johnson living room was palpable as Agent Carter and his team interrogated Zixara. The alien sat on the couch, her forehands clasped tightly in her lap, with Tom and Emily flanking her protectively. Lily and Max had been sent to their rooms, but Zixara could hear them whispering and shuffling near the top of the stairs. "Let me be clear," Agent Carter said, his voice cold and precise. "You are an unauthorized extraterrestrial presence on Earth. Your very existence here is a threat to national security. We need to know everything about your species, your technology, and your intentions." Zixara took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing hearts. "I understand your concerns," she said, her translator working overtime to convey the right tone. "But I assure you, I mean no harm to your planet or your people. My presence here was an accident, a crash landing. The Johnsons have shown me nothing but kindness." Carter's eyes narrowed. "Kindness is irrelevant. What matters is the potential threat you pose. For all we know, you could be the vanguard of an invasion force." Tom stood up, his face flushed with anger. "Now wait just a minute. Zixara has been living with us for weeks. If she wanted to harm us, she's had plenty of opportunities." "Mr. Johnson," Carter said, his voice dripping with condescension, "I understand you've developed an attachment to this creature, but you need to step back and let us do our job. This is bigger than your family." Emily joined her husband, her eyes flashing. "This creature has a name, and she's part of our family now. We're not going to let you just take her away and treat her like some lab experiment." As the argument escalated, Zixara felt a growing sense of guilt and fear. She had never meant to cause such conflict, to put this family she had grown to love in danger. She stood up, her luminescent freckles pulsing with distress. "Please," she said, her voice cutting through the heated exchange. "I don't want anyone to be hurt because of me. I'll go with you voluntarily, Agent Carter. But I have one condition." Carter raised an eyebrow. "You're not exactly in a position to make demands." Zixara stood her ground. "I will share what I know about my people and our technology. But in return, you must promise not to harm the Johnsons or punish them for helping me. They acted out of compassion, a trait that, from what I've seen, is one of humanity's greatest strengths." There was a tense moment of silence as Carter considered her words. Finally, he nodded curtly. "Very well. The Johnsons will not be charged with harboring an alien, provided they cooperate fully with our investigation." As Zixara prepared to leave with the agents, Lily and Max burst into the room, tears streaming down their faces. They threw themselves at the alien, hugging her tightly. "You can't go," Lily sobbed. "You're our friend." Max looked up at Agent Carter, his young face set in determination. "If you take Zixara, you have to take us too. We're a package deal." Zixara felt her hearts breaking at the children's distress. She knelt down, gently disentangling herself from their embrace. "Lily, Max," she said softly, "I have to go for now. But I promise I'll do everything I can to come back to you. You've taught me so much about what it means to be a family." As the agents led Zixera out to their vehicles, she took one last look at the Johnson home, the place that had become her sanctuary on this strange world. Tom and Emily stood on the porch, their arms around their children, watching with a mixture of sorrow and determination. In that moment, Zixera made a silent vow. She would find a way to protect this family and this planet that had shown her such warmth and acceptance. Whatever tests and interrogations lay ahead, she would face them with the strength and resilience she had learned from her human friends. The next few weeks were a blur of sterile rooms, endless questions, and invasive tests. Zixera was moved to a secret government facility, where teams of scientists and military personnel worked around the clock to unravel the mysteries of her biology and technology. Despite the clinical environment and often harsh treatment, Zixera remained cooperative. She answered their questions truthfully, demonstrated her species' abilities, and even helped them understand some of the basic principles behind her ship's technology. But she was careful not to reveal anything that could potentially be weaponized or used to harm her own people. Throughout it all, Zixera held on to the memory of the Johnsons like a lifeline. The love and acceptance they had shown her gave her strength in her darkest moments. She often wondered how they were doing, if they were safe, if they missed her as much as she missed them. One day, as Zixera was undergoing yet another round of tests, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, and she could hear shouts and running footsteps in the corridor outside her room. Before she could process what was happening, the door burst open. To her shock, Tom Johnson stood there, dressed in a stolen lab coat and looking slightly out of breath. "Zixera," he exclaimed. "Thank God we found you. Come on, we don't have much time." Stunned, Zixera allowed Tom to lead her through the chaos of the facility. As they ran, he explained in hurried whispers. The Johnsons had refused to give up on her, spending weeks gathering information, making connections, and planning this rescue mission. But why? Zixera asked as they ducked into a service elevator. "You've risked everything for me. Your safety, your freedom." Tom looked at her, his eyes filled with a fierce determination that took her breath away. "Because you're family, Zixera. And on Earth, family means nobody gets left behind." As they emerged from the facility into the bright sunlight, Zixera saw Emily waiting in a battered old van, the engine running. The children were in the back, their faces pressed against the windows, grinning and waving excitedly. As they sped away from the compound, alarms still blaring in the distance, Zixera felt a surge of emotions she couldn't quite name. Gratitude, love, fear, and something else. A burning desire to protect these humans who had risked everything for her. She knew their troubles were far from over. They would be hunted now, branded as fugitives. But as she looked at the determined faces of the Johnsons, Zixera felt a spark of hope. Together, they just might find a way to navigate this crisis. As the van sped down empty back roads, putting distance between them and the facility, Zixera realized something profound. In her time on Earth, she had learned that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their capacity for love, their unwavering loyalty to those they considered family, even when that family came from the stars. The hunt had begun, but Zixera was no longer alone. With her human family by her side, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As they drove into an uncertain future, Zixera allowed herself a small smile. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing for certain. Her life had been irrevocably changed by the day humans decided she was family. Escape and revelation. The old van rumbled down winding back roads, its occupants a strange mix of human and alien fugitives. Zixera sat in the middle row, her 4 arms wrapped protectively around Lily and Max, who had finally succumbed to exhaustion and fallen asleep. In the front, Tom drove with grim determination, while Emily pored over a wrinkled paper map, plotting their course. "We need to find somewhere safe," Tom said, his voice low to avoid waking the children. Somewhere off the grid where we can regroup and figure out our next move. Emily nodded, tracing a route with her finger. I think I know a place. My uncle has an old hunting cabin in the mountains. It's isolated, hard to find unless you know where to look. As they drove through the night, Zixara's mind raced. The Johnsons had risked everything to rescue her, and now they were all in danger. She felt a deep responsibility to protect them, but she also knew that her presence put them at risk. The conflict tore at her hearts. Just as the first light of dawn began to paint the sky, they arrived at the cabin. It was a small, rustic structure nestled in a clearing, surrounded by towering pine trees. As they unloaded their meager supplies, Zixara marveled at the quiet beauty of the forest. Once inside, the family began to settle in. Tom secured the windows and doors while Emily prepared a simple meal. The children, groggy but excited by the adventure, peppered Zixara with questions about what had happened at the facility. As they sat around the cabin's small table, eating and discussing their situation, Zixara made a decision. It was time to tell them everything. There's something I need to share with you, she began, her luminescent freckles pulsing with nervousness. Something about why I was in this part of the galaxy in the first place. The Johnsons leaned in, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. Zixara took a deep breath. My people have been observing Earth for a long time. We've watched your civilization grow, seen your triumphs and your struggles, and we've come to a conclusion that has shaken the galactic community to its core. She paused, looking each of them in the eye. Humanity is unique. In all our exploration of the galaxy, we've never encountered a species quite like yours. You're adaptable, resilient, and capable of incredible leaps of innovation. But more than that, you have a capacity for empathy and connection that is unparalleled. Tom furrowed his brow. But surely other alien species must have similar traits. Zixara shook her head. Not like this. Most spacefaring races achieve interstellar travel through cold logic and ruthless efficiency. But humans, you dream. You create art and music. You form deep bonds not just with your own kind, but with other species, even inanimate objects. You anthropomorphize everything from your vehicles to your planets. She gestured at the family around her. Look at what you've done for me. You took in a strange alien creature, made me part of your family, and then risked everything to save me. This level of altruism towards an outsider is almost unheard of in the galaxy. Emily leaned forward, her eyes wide. But why is this so important? Why were you really sent here? Zixara's freckles pulsed faster. Because the galaxy is changing. Ancient alliances are fracturing, and conflicts are brewing that could tear the fabric of interstellar society apart. Many believe that humanity, with its unique blend of innovation, adaptability, and empathy, could be the key to bringing peace and stability to the galaxy. The cabin fell silent as the Johnsons processed this information. It was Lily who finally broke the silence. So, you're saying we're special? She asked, her young face scrunched in concentration. Zixara nodded. More than you know. Your planet, which many in the galaxy dismissed as a primitive backwater, might just be the most important world in the universe. Max's eyes lit up. Cool. Does this mean we get to go to space? The question hung in the air, filled with both excitement and trepidation. Zixara looked at Tom and Emily, seeing the worry in their eyes. They had already sacrificed so much for her. Could she ask them to give up their entire world? Before she could respond, a low rumble filled the air. At first, Zixara thought it was thunder, but as it grew louder, she realized with a jolt of fear that it was the sound of approaching aircraft. Tom rushed to the window, peering out through a gap in the curtains. Helicopters, he said grimly. At least 3 of them. They found us. Panic threatened to overwhelm Zixara. She had led danger right to this family that had shown her nothing but kindness. But as she looked at their faces, scared but determined, she felt a surge of resolve. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice thick with emotion. This is all my fault. I never meant to bring this chaos into your lives." Emily reached out, taking one of Zixera's hands in her own. "Don't apologize. We chose this. We chose you." Tom nodded, his jaw set. "We're in this together, no matter what happens next." As the sound of the helicopters grew closer, Zixera made a split-second decision. She reached into a hidden pocket in her suit and pulled out a small glowing orb. "This is a distress beacon," she explained quickly. "It will signal my people. If I activate it, they'll come for us. But if they do, it will force an official first contact between our species. It will change everything for Earth and the galaxy." The Johnsons exchanged looks, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Tom spoke for them all. "Do it," he said firmly. "If humanity is as important as you say, then maybe it's time we took our place in the galaxy." With trembling hands, Zixera activated the beacon. It pulsed with a soft, otherworldly light, sending its signal out into the cosmos. As they huddled together in the small cabin, the sound of helicopters growing ever closer, Zixera felt a mix of fear and hope. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, she would face it with her human family by her side. The beacon's light grew brighter, filling the cabin with an ethereal glow. Outside, the helicopter's searchlights swept the clearing, closing in on their location. But Zixera's eyes were fixed on the sky, watching for the first sign of her people's arrival. In that moment, balanced on the knife edge between capture and salvation, Earth's future hung in the balance. And at the center of it all was a most unlikely family, a group of humans, and one alien, bound together by love, trust, and the unbreakable bonds of chosen family. As the first streaks of light appeared in the sky, heralding the arrival of Zixera's people, she squeezed the hands of her human family. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The true first contact between humanity and the galactic community was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same again. The choice. The cabin was bathed in an otherworldly light as Zixera's distress beacon pulsed with increasing intensity. Outside, the helicopter's searchlights swept the clearing, their spotlights harsh against the soft glow emanating from within. The Johnson family huddled close to Zixera, their faces a mixture of fear and awe as they watched the sky. Suddenly, a blinding flash lit up the night, momentarily outshining even the searchlights. When their vision cleared, they saw a sight that took their breath away. A massive, sleek spacecraft hovered silently above the clearing, its hull shimmering with an iridescent light that seemed to bend reality around it. The helicopters scattered, their pilots clearly caught off guard by the sudden appearance of the alien vessel. In the ensuing chaos, a beam of light shot down from the ship, engulfing the cabin and its occupants. Zixera felt the familiar tingle of a transport beam, and she instinctively wrapped her 4 arms around the Johnsons. "Don't be afraid," she said softly. "We're being brought aboard." In a flash of light, they found themselves in a vast, gleaming chamber. Sleek, organic-looking consoles lined the walls, and tall, willowy beings that looked similar to Zixera moved about with purpose. At the center of the room stood a figure that radiated authority, clearly the ship's captain. "Scout Zixera," the captain said, her voice melodious yet stern. "You have violated numerous protocols and potentially compromised our entire mission on this planet." Her gaze shifted to the humans. "And you have involved the native species directly in our affairs." Zixera stepped forward, her luminescent freckles pulsing rapidly. "Captain, I take full responsibility for my actions. But I've learned something crucial during my time with these humans, something that could change everything." As Zixera began to explain her experiences and insights, the Johnsons watched in amazement. The alien crew listened intently, their expressions shifting from skepticism to surprise and finally to something akin to wonder. When Zixera finished, the captain was silent for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. "If what you say is true, then we may need to reevaluate our entire approach to this species. She turned to the Johnsons. Humans, you have been thrust into a situation far beyond your normal experience. Yet from what Zixera tells us, you have handled it with remarkable grace and compassion. Tom stepped forward, his voice steady despite the surreal situation. We just did what any decent people would do. Zixera needed help, and then she became part of our family. It's as simple as that. The captain's eyes widened slightly at Tom's words. Family, she repeated, as if tasting the word. This concept seems to hold great importance to your species. Emily nodded. It's everything to us. And family isn't just about blood. It's about choice, about love. The alien crew murmured among themselves, clearly fascinated by this idea. The captain raised a hand for silence, then addressed the humans again. We find ourselves at a crossroads, she said. Our original mission was one of covert observation, but circumstances have forced our hand. Now we must decide how to proceed with official first contact between our civilizations. Max, who had been uncharacteristically quiet until now, suddenly spoke up. Does this mean we get to be space ambassadors? A ripple of something like laughter passed through the alien crew. The captain's stern expression softened slightly. Young one, your species' role in galactic affairs may indeed be far greater than we initially believed. She turned back to Zixera. Scout, you have formed a unique bond with these humans. We believe your insights will be invaluable as we navigate this unprecedented situation. However, her tone grew serious. You must make a choice. You can return to your duties among our people, or you can remain with the humans as our official liaison. Be warned, if you choose to stay, it may be years before you can return home. Zixera felt her heart's race as she contemplated the decision before her. She looked at the Johnsons, Tom and Emily, who had taken her in without hesitation. Lily and Max, who had accepted her as family from the start. Then she looked at her own people, her duty, the life she had known. In that moment, Zixera realized that her time on Earth had changed her irrevocably. The love she had experienced, the bonds she had formed, they were too precious to abandon. I choose to stay, she said, her voice clear and confident. These humans, this family, have shown me what it truly means to belong. I believe I can serve both our peoples best by remaining here, helping to bridge the gap between our civilizations. The captain nodded solemnly. So be it. Your decision is recorded. She then addressed the Johnsons. Humans, your lives are about to change dramatically. Your world will soon learn of our existence, and your family will be at the forefront of this historic moment. Are you prepared for this responsibility? The Johnsons exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Then, as one, they turned back to the captain. We are, Tom said firmly. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together, as a family. The captain's expression softened into something like respect. Then let us begin. The dawn of a new era for both our peoples is upon us. As alarms began to sound on the ship's consoles, indicating the approach of more human aircraft, the captain quickly outlined the next steps. The ship would remain visible, hovering above the cabin, as a sign of peaceful intentions. Zixera and the Johnsons would return to Earth to act as intermediaries, explaining the situation to human authorities and paving the way for formal diplomatic relations. As they prepared to beam back down to the cabin, now surrounded by a growing number of military vehicles, Zixera felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The path ahead would not be easy, but she knew that with her human family by her side, anything was possible. Lily tugged on one of Zixera's hands. Does this mean you're staying with us forever? She asked, her eyes wide with hope. Zixera knelt down, bringing herself to eye level with the child. Yes, Lily. You're my family now, and family means nobody gets left behind, remember. As the transport beam enveloped them once more, Zixera looked at the faces of her human family. The ones who had chosen her, who had risked everything for her. In their eyes, she saw love, determination, and an unshakable bond that transcended the barriers of species and worlds. The light faded, and they found themselves back in the clearing, facing a line of stunned military personnel. Above them, Zixara's ship hovered, a silent testament to the momentous changes about to sweep across the Earth. Tom squeezed Zixara's shoulder. "Ready for this?" he asked. Zixara nodded, her freckles pulsing with determination. "Ready," she replied. Together, this unlikely family stepped forward to greet the dawn of a new era, one where the bonds of love and family would bridge the vast distances between stars, and where humanity would take its first steps into a larger, more wondrous universe. As they approached the line of awestruck soldiers and officials, Zixara felt a profound sense of rightness. She had come to Earth as an accidental visitor, but she would remain as family. And in that simple, powerful truth lay the hope for a brighter future, not just for Earth or her own people, but for the entire galaxy. The story of humanity's journey to the stars had only just begun, and at its heart was the unbreakable bond of a family that transcended the boundaries of worlds and species. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united by a love that knew no limits. And so, as the first light of a new day broke over the horizon, Zixara and her human family stood ready to usher in a new chapter in the history of two worlds, a chapter written in the language of love, acceptance, and the enduring power of chosen family.